Quentin Tarantino introduces us to an assortment of colorful thieves trying to find out who betrayed them in his debut film, 1992's Reservoir Dogs. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast Deja Vu edition for our guests. We'll get right to it. Welcoming Christy Cuomo to the fray, entering the arena with her hammer and her shield.
Well, I do come and Sean, I respect you.
Sean who? We didn't introduce anyone.
Well, he's here. I see him. He's a gent. But I'm going to up you on this one.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Look, Christy, for those of you in the auditory world, is holding up. She plays with dolls.
Well,
doll. Which one is that?
Mr. Orange. Come on. Tim Roth, baby.
Orange Reservoir Dog.
Right.
Tim Roth, my Reservoir Dogs crush.
Yeah, it should come with an alternate shirt, right, Sean?
Did they come with
I guess we know who her favorite character is then.
Yeah, no, I bought stock in Tim Roth a long time ago.
Color.
Yeah.
Okay.
It should come with entrails. That should be like the extra piece. Is entrails.
So who else do we got, Dean?
Yeah, thank you, Christy, for joining us. We appreciate it and bringing your.
Thank you for having me.
Your show and tell. This is a show and tell edition. Next up, Mr. Sean Grady. Welcome aboard, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Good to have you aboard. Sean is the proprietor.
Sean, come
you
on.
Don't have anything in Reservoir Dogs?
Wow.
You set the bar up here, man.
I know.
Yeah.
You win. You've won.
just in this episode.
Christy won the internet tonight. Sean is the proprietor of Drama from the Past, along with his partner, Gary. They do great one-act plays. Surrounding events happening during the Revolutionary War in the New York area. So if you're in this area, go find them on Facebook. Even if you're not in this area, find them on Facebook and give them a like and follow them. Help support that. Mm-hmm. And if you do find yourself in this part of the country, go check them out. This is their prime season right now. This is when they're out and about getting things done. And it really is great, fun, informative, and a great way to kind of recapture history. It seems like American history is quickly falling further. The further away we get from it, it's kind of a little disconnect, and they're really working hard to bring it to people. So thank you, Sean.
And it's well appreciated, Sean. Well appreciated.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Sean.
Yes. And our final guest is dressed as a tax collector. I'm not sure if we owe him money or I'm not sure what's going on, but it is. Oh, it's Mr. Nick Leshy.
Thank you.
There he is.
Neo.
He is the creator of the City of Kick blog, which you can find on the internet. We'll drop a link in the show notes for Nick Leshy's City of Kick blog, as well as Drama from the Past for Sean Grady. Nick, welcome aboard. How are you doing?
Glad to be here. Always happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and for those of you watching, no, Nick is not moonlighting as a waiter. He is cosplaying as one of the thieves. Mr. Purple is his moniker tonight.
Mm-hmm. Mentioned in the movie, to call him that. Not seen.
I will not call him by his Christian name.
He's on another job.
Another job.
And it's grape
not
juice.
Not refer to each other's by your Christian names.
It's grape juice. So he says. But
holding up that grape juice, and of course, Eric and I are here holding down the fort each week for you to come on in and check out what we have to share about music and movies. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great content to dive into, and you can find us on social media as well and on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and give a like and a subscribe. That would help us. That would be great stuff. So let's get into this. Let's dive into Reservoir Dogs. It was released in October of 1992, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. Budget, this is a wide swing of a budget, $1.2 to $3 million budget. That's like almost double what the lowball number is. And it only made $2.9 million in the box office. This by no means was a hit out of the gate. This was not a miss. It was just a film that just didn't get seen. Because it was, there was that time of the 90s, 92, you had Scent of a Woman, you had a lot of big films, and this decidedly was something very small. I think
it made up for it on home video.
Oh, absolutely.
Purchases.
Yeah. I was gonna say once Pulp Fiction there was that groundswell. Then once people saw Pulp Fiction, I think they kind of backtracked and then started getting this on VHS and DVD, and it really kind of kind of kickstarted it, the love for Reservoir Dogs. I believe I saw it. I'm 99% sure I saw it before Pulp Fiction came out. I was kind of still like not jaded about films and would watch these small types of films and was absolutely captivated by it. Anybody else see it before Pulp Fiction came out?
No, but I had heard about it because it was making a buzz in the festival circuit, right? Because people were like loving it or hating it, because of the violence and the language. When Tarantino first wanted to do it, he only had like a $50,000 budget for it. But then once Harvey Keitel jumped on it, I think he got some funding and it went up to like over $1 million. And that's when the casting too, they were able to get some really big names and not big names, but like talented actors who wanted to be part of it. And like you said, once Pulp Fiction came out, but even before that, I was hearing people who had seen it and talked about it, and they were like quoting it and like raving about it. So when I went to see Pulp Fiction, I had no idea who this Tarantino guy was, but I had heard about Reservoir Dogs. And then once that, like you said, then people just were like trying to get it on video to see it and see what all the buzz was about.
Yeah, and it was a worthy opening salvo too. It wasn't like, oh, everyone saw Pulp Fiction and here's the other film that was kind of like a swing and a miss. In most cases, I actually prefer this above all of his films. Getting back to Tarantino and the $50,000, he was going to shoot it like on 16 millimeter with some friends. He had a friend, Lawrence Bender, who was taking acting lessons. So Tarantino gave the script to Lawrence Bender, who then gave it to his acting teacher. Then his acting teacher gave it to his wife, and then his wife got it to Harvey Keitel. That was like 5 degrees of separation to get it to Harvey Keitel, but it went from a video store clerk to Harvey Keitel in 5
Was
people.
Kevin Bacon involved in that?
No, but he probably should have been. I'm surprised if he wasn't. So Harvey Keitel got his hands on it and said, "Yeah, you know what? This is interesting. I'm intrigued. I can help produce it." So he was able to raise the $1 million, which I'm surprised that Harvey Keitel couldn't get more than that. I mean, Harvey
Didn't he put up some of his own money?
Well,
I think he put up some of his own money.
I'm sure there was the initial money that Keitel got, and then they added adding to it.
I think Tarantino wanted to put up his own money. I think he had some bank.
He was doing a credit card. He was putting it all on credit card or something.
And Bender told him no. Like he told him, don't do that. Because that's a mistake.
That's rule number one in filmmaking.
Yeah.
Wasn't Tarantino? Wasn't he an extra where he was in a film, but you didn't know it was him, and didn't he get paid and he was using that money towards it? I thought I read something like that.
And he was still working at the video store too.
And he was writing. He had all. That was.
He was on the Golden Girls.
That's what it was. He got the money from the Golden Girls, and that's how he was paying for this. But let's not forget, it's 1992, so $1 million is a lot of money in 1992. It's not like we're looking at it from 2023. We're like, oh, $1 million.
It is for Sean, right? For such a small film, this is a film that basically takes place in essentially one place with just a couple of other sets.
Yeah. It took place in an old mortuary.
Mortuary.
An
abandoned mortuary.
Yeah.
And fun fact, Mr. Orange's apartment was actually above the mortuary, and they kind of dressed it up to make it look like a separate thing. And
like a child's room.
What's that? It was a child's room.
Child's room.
Oh yeah.
You know what?
It's all those the posters from the
Silver Surfer.
Of course, that's an adult's room.
That was not an adult's room.
That's an adult's room.
Man.
Originally, Don Cryer was approached to be Mr. Orange, and he accepted, and he ended up backing out. I think that was a wise idea.
Yeah.
Especially in '92, okay. John Cryer was still like kind of ducky, and it was like that. I don't think he would have nothing against John Cryer. I don't know that he would have risen to the role of Mr. Orange.
I like John Cryer. I don't think he would.
I mean, he would have been neurotic for sure, that he would have sold it, but I don't know. Roth was able to.
He owns it, Roth.
Yeah.
David Lee.
That, So he maintained that sort of acting within acting, right? He was a great actor within the film itself. So so I don't know.
And one of the reasons, and when Tim Roth signed on, he was approached to play a different character. And he said, "Well, I want to play Mr. Orange because I'm a British person playing an American who's playing a cop who's pretending to be a robber. So he really kind of was approaching this role from what kind of challenge it could bring to him.
Yeah.
So not only was he had to do an American accent, but then he had to be someone pretending to be someone else. So there's a lot of different levels there. This film kind of set the Tarantino blueprint, because this also plays with time shifting, Nick, which everybody talks about in Pulp Fiction is the time shifting and the circular notion of the film, and this kind of does that in a lot of ways too. There's a lot of flashbacks, and then there's a flashback that brings you forward and catches you up as the robbery is being planned and we're learning more about it. That timeline is getting closer to the events that we catch up with, right?
Yeah, Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction have that non-linear storytelling that I usually hate. I hate flashbacks because it's sometimes lazy storytelling. He does it so well because every time there is a flash forward or a flashback, it's revealing something new in the plot, right? And that's how you do it well, in Pulp Fiction, the very ending is a scene that it's just the timing of it, the way it's placed in the plot line. If you take a linear plot line, it wouldn't make sense to have a scene end that way, but yet it does. It works. And the same thing with Reservoir Dogs. You learn about the characters, you learn about their motivation, so it's really great.
Yeah, I think that's one of Tarantino's strong suits, because he's not a perfect filmmaker by any means, but one of his strong suits is pacing and plotting out a story. Whether the story is good or bad or mediocre or indifferent, he really has that adept touch at arranging those kind of plot points, and so it does make so you get a flashback, but like you said, it doesn't feel like it, especially in Reservoir Dogs, that each flashback is attached to a particular character. So you're getting, like the first one is Mr. White, and then Mr. Blonde, and and then Mr. Orange has kind of got some alternate scenes because he meets with the undercover cop, but then there's the flat, he meets with the undercover cop now, and then there's the flashback. So he plays with time a little bit.
And then there's that scene where he's telling the story that's fictional, but yet they reenact it and they show it as if it was reality, right? So a lot of that stuff, he revisits that later in his other movies. The dog barking, Yeah.
Let's get everybody up to speed with what we're talking about. Let's run through the cast. You've got here's where it gets very colorful. It's like a bag of Skittles. Harvey Keitel is Mr. White. Tim Roth is Mr. Orange. Michael Madsen is Mr. Blonde. Chris Penn is Nice Guy Eddie. If you don't know who Chris Penn is, he is deceased, but he's Sean Penn's brother, just a great actor in his own right. A very early Steve Buscemi as Mr. Pink. The fantastic Lawrence Tierney as Joe Cabot.
Well,
Randy Brooks is Holdaway. He's the what's that?
I said I think some people on the set might have disagreed with you on that.
Well, too bad. His performance is there. Randy Brooks is Holdaway. He's the undercover. He's the undercover cop. Kirk Balls as Marvin Nash. He is the police officer that gets captured. Eddie Bunker is Mr. Blue. Quentin Tarantino cast himself as Mr. Brown, and then Stephen Wright as the voice of K Billy, the DJ for K Billy Super Sounds of the 70s, which is the radio show that is heard throughout the movie and referenced as well, and used to great effect to kind of help frame some of the things, because that's another that would become another hallmark thing, Eric, right? Is Tarantino's use of music, which he probably, Tarantino's been, people say he says it's homages. People accuse Tarantino outright of stealing. This we could say he gets this from Scorsese. I think, right? The incorporating the music, using existing popular music to frame scenes and to create tension.
Right. And that's the score for the most part. He would act, well, I think where the stealing comes into play is when he's actually ripping off film scores from people. He's done that in films like Ennio Morricone. Film scores,
shots and storylines. I mean, this is
he's actually lift like music from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and put it in his film. That's stealing. Yeah, that's but songs, but he does it very well because he tends to pick a lot of obscure stuff, and he's just really good at that. Like, I don't know where he finds this stuff. I have songs I've never even heard of by artists that popular artists, but they do cover versions of things,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, he's very much steeped in musical knowledge and movie knowledge. Tarantino.
Yeah.
This is someone, Sean. He's kind of like a movie fan that makes films. Like he really is.
Yeah.
Steeped in the lore.
Absolutely, I think the music is very much an important part of this film. It's what makes it memorable for me. In fact, I heard the soundtrack before I actually I saw the movie. A buddy of mine had the soundtrack and he was playing these songs. I'm like, what is Reservoir? What is this? He's like, oh, you've never seen this? And it was the same time Pulp Fiction that was coming out. So I saw Pulp Fiction and then Reservoir Dogs. But I was introduced to the soundtrack first. And I love the soundtrack. I don't know who the George Baker selection are, but Little Green Bag.
Little Green Bag, that's a great song from the 70s.
I mean, I never heard it until that, and then Stuck in the Middle. That's you can't.
He much like Scorsese did with Atlantis, the Donovan song, right? For when Billy Batts met his end.
Yeah.
That song is forever tied with that scene now, or the middle part of Layla for the montage at the end of Goodfellas when all the bodies are, Stuck in the Middle with You by Steeler's Wheel has become that iconic, that song tied to an iconic scene that now the song has transcended something and has become part of movie history now because of that.
You can't hear that song and not think of that scene with Mr. Blonde.
Right.
You can't, anytime you hear it, it's on. I read somewhere that he was adamant that song had to be he was building around that specific song. Like he didn't care about anything else, but that song had to be in the film. And I think he spent a good deal paying for that, to have it on the soundtrack.
It was definitely worth it. It was just like I said, Tarantino is adept at matching. And I think he says he writes that way too, that he has those songs kind of pre-thought out, and kind of, has things that, that he wants to attach, those scenes that he wants to attach those songs to. So
Scorsese does the same thing. He'll actually write it on the script notes itself. Like I want blocking out the scenes. I want this song and this scene and that, and so on and so on. But that's.
So Dean, I never thought of Tarantino copying Scorsese with the way he uses music, but assuming he does, do you not think that maybe he does it better because he's much more eclectic? Like he doesn't Scorsese has gotten to the habit of using a lot of the same songs, especially Rolling Stones songs and films.
Yeah.
And I don't think Tarantino does that. Like he is really good at picking really good different songs. Stuff. So it's almost like he's transcended the Scorsese level,
right? Well, he has, but at what point does that also become a gimmick?
I don't know. I've never thought of it as a gimmick.
Like, okay, it could almost become a crutch too, that you don't move past.
I don't think that happened with him. I think he's done it well, but I mean, I guess it's up to the individual.
Okay.
I mean, has there been a point that you thought it wasn't done well? I think to that point, it's like it's not a gimmick unless it's falls in its face, like kind of the M. Night Shyamalan twist ending that he, that becomes a gimmick where you're like waiting for it. I think the music part and the whole, I don't know. I just the homages that he does. I think it is intentional. It's like that's his, his
part of the language.
Exactly, that's what he does. And either you like it or you don't. But
I can't think of any of his movies that the music
doesn't work, right? I can't picture it.
Yeah, it's always integral. It's always an integral part of it.
Yeah.
For those that haven't seen Pulp Fiction, this is about a jewel heist. And due to budgetary concerns, they were never able to film the jewel heist, which I think is a good thing. I think it, not showing the heist was not that, it wasn't really important. The heist itself wasn't important to what was going on. It's the after effect. It's how these characters interact after, like with Heat, like a film like Heat, the heist was an important thing because it was a very, you want to see how it was done. That was as important of part of it as anything. But with this film, it's actually a side thing. Like, the heist, we're planning it. We're going to rob a bank. It happens. There are things that happened, and we get the information from the characters and their points of view on it, which I think is interesting because we don't get to see it, and we don't get to see if somebody was wrong about it. We don't get to see if Harvey Keitel, if Mr. White was wrong about how it was, or So I thought it was a very interesting. They had to drop it because of budgetary constraints, but from a filmmaking standpoint, it was
I had no idea that they were planning to do it. I thought that was the way it was written. There is no heist. No this is a character-driven film. We're gonna,
that's what it became
inside their heads. So I had that's weird.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that they filmed it and dropped it. I think it works.
No, they wanted to. Due to budgetary concerns, they couldn't film it. They wanted.
It does work a lot better.
It works better the way it is.
That's what makes the movie interesting. It's different. It's unique.
Yes. Yeah, like Dean said, it's all these different character interpretations, and like you don't know if Mr. White is telling the truth or Mr.
It's
Blonde
a crime drama without the crime.
Yes, right. It works.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's
all you need to know is that it didn't go well. That's all you need to know, and it's like, but you want to know, like, and it's like you got to find that out through the dialogue, which is that's the tone.
That's Tarantino's strong suit. And Reservoir Dogs really highlights it from the beginning scene with they go from Like a Virgin to the ups and downs of tipping.
Yeah.
Back to Like a Virgin, so Tarantino really showed in this film that he was really adept at manage, and he likes ensemble casts, and he's really good at managing the individual characters and really kind of making each one have a particular voice. And I think none more so than in this film, because each character is basically nameless. They're a color, so you only know them by how they act.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting.
Would you say that Tarantino might be the first person to instill pop culture into the dialogue, and that became the hip thing? Like, that's part of the language. He
definitely brought it to the forefront. Yeah,
referencing music, referencing other movies, things like that, which everybody's doing today. You just get tired of it. It's just nothing but that today. But I would think him and Kevin Smith, at the time, they were the ones that were sort of, breaking that out. You think of Clerks.
That self-aware filmmaking, right? That's
talking about Star Wars, because that's what we would be doing, right? We're, so you kind of, it's more relatable. And in that sense, that they're actually having a discussion. And in the older character, Harvey Keitel is like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like, I got Madonna's dick in one ear and I got this in the other. And it's like, and, he's like to me, he kind of feels like the character from Mean Streets meeting these other losers, kind of like, so there's a sort of a generational gap there, but that, it speaks to that new hip way of communicating to one another, which would, he would actually go on to do that visually. By the time Kill Bill comes out, he's like referencing visually all this stuff now, but in the dialogue, I think that's this is a dialogue driven piece. So each individual character has their own style. Sean, what character kind of rings true for you?
Rings true? Or,
which one really kind of,
which one speaks to your soul?
Yeah, exactly. Which one really rings true for you? It's not a bad question.
Yeah.
They're all kind of not
they're all not savory characters. So I don't it's a toss up between I like Buscemi, Mr. Pink, and Mr. Blonde. Those guys I find the most entertaining. I would say if I had to pick, Mr. Blonde, and I enjoy that. He gets what's coming.
And two polar opposites, right? Steve Buscemi, Mr. Pink is probably the most is the realist among the bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
100%.
I mean, he kind of understand. He from the beginning we've got a rat. We've got to get out of here. Staying here is stupid. This is a bad idea.
Like he says, he's the only one acting like a professional in this entire movie.
And he's not afraid to call it like he sees it, even if he gets his ass kicked or gets pushed around. He stays true to what, like, he kind of, he's what we need is a little solidarity here. Like he's trying to get people to kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And he's the only one that probably would have gotten away.
Professional of the scumbags.
He is. Some guys make it and some guys don't.
Yeah. Because there was that great scene where he's talking to Mr. White, Harvey Keitel, and he's like, "You didn't tell him anything about you," and he's, "Oh, I may have told him my name," and
where I'm from.
And Steve Buscemi's like, "Well, they're going to get to him, they're going to get to you, and they're going to get to me, and that can't happen." Like there was that whole, like, in his mind, he was kind of verbally going through the steps of how this could affect him.
And there was almost that point when Mr. White almost tells him his name again. Right?
Yeah. Because you were just about to tell me 5 minutes ago.
He's like, you were just about to tell me, right?
Yeah. So yeah, Mr. Pink was an interesting character because it almost seemed like it was a job. Like this was a job to him. Yeah, all these guys are quote unquote professionals, but for him, it really seems like he has a code. He smelled something was fishy. We got to get out of here. I'm not. It seemed, that he was the most, had his head screwed on the best.
But he still can't leave.
What's that?
He still can't bring himself to leave, though. He
got convinced. Well, he got convinced. That's he got convinced. That's that was the thing. Because at first he wanted to. He was like, okay, we'll bring Mr. Orange. Mr. Orange gets shot, so he's basically dying. First they were going to bring him to a hospital. He's like, okay, and then once he found out that he told him his name, he's like, forget it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm very. It's like, I'm very sorry about that, but he's going to die. It's like too bad. And then you've got Mr. Blonde. So Sean swings the pendulum the other way to Michael Madsen's character, Vic Vega, Mr. Blonde, who's a very interesting character. I've got a couple of questions I want to put out about Mr. Blonde too. First of all, Michael Madsen is just absolutely magical in this film. He's got so much. He's got charisma to spare, especially in the scenes. His flashback scene with Lawrence Tierney, the way he's shot, and the way he's kind of he is spoon feeding the camera his charisma, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like he's just so like likable and charismatic. So you think, okay, he seems like a nice guy. His main concern is going back to crime, though. In that scene, it's kind of like, that's great. You put me up on a place, but when am I going to get back to work? And it's like that.
He doesn't want a no-show job. He wants to really go in there and earn it, right?
Yeah.
Get his hands dirty.
One of the things about that scene, sorry, Eric, is and it's so subtle. It's just a little thing he does, Michael Madsen. But when he's sitting there and he's I don't think Nice Guy Eddie walks in yet, and he gets to drink, and he takes a sip, he puts it down, and his leg is crossed, and he just picks something off his pants and throws it down. I don't know what it is about it, but it's just so natural. It just it's just a little move he made, a little as a choice as an actor that I felt acting wise just put him above everyone else in that scene. And it's just a subtle thing that he did, but Michael Madsen is he's just blowing it out of the water in this movie. I love Michael Madsen. Good choice.
And then Chris Penn walks in and
then they wrestle.
Chews up just destroys the scenery. Yeah. Like he's just such a such a big character. But their interactions really telegraphed that there was a history between the two, that they probably grew up together. They've probably been friends a long time because of the whole wrestling and the fooling around and the roughhousing. Guys that don't know each other that well don't do that, so there's obviously a history between those two where, because then after they're done roughhousing, Michael Madsen, Mr. Blonde, was going to get out of the chair again and start wrestling because he wanted to now. So it was kind of like, and Joe Cabot's like, do that in Eddie's office. Or,
Can I just ask a question to the four of you?
Sure.
What's the deal with men wrestling? What like randomly just throwing each other on the ground? What is that? It
happens out in the middle of the street. Randomly, you just see two guys start wrestling. Everyone just stops and lets it happen.
Well, you said you wouldn't wrestle. You wouldn't roughhouse or wrestle with a guy you didn't know.
Yeah, like that guys do. That young guys do when you're young and you're roughhousing, right?
Young.
That's what we're going
with. Not that young.
They're not, but they do. What I'm saying is that connection.
Can I see Fight Club?
That's what I'm saying. It's all
Sean,
fight. That's the whole theme of Fight Club.
Sean, did I see Fight Club?
Maybe.
Possibly.
Wait, what's the poster?
Who's in Fight Club?
We don't talk about Fight Club. Let's get back.
Brad Pitt is in Fight Club.
Wait, Sean, what was that? Brad Pitt.
Oh,
no.
She's got a bell. Look at that. She came prepared.
Hard-earned money on that.
This is the Brad Pitt bell.
Just to be edited out.
Thank you, Sean. Well done.
So
we're getting back to Michael Madsen. You
I
guys,
listened to the last episode. I walked right into it. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
You guys see a completely different character than I do. Can we like let's address the fact that he's a complete fucking psychopath.
He's a psychopath, but
I don't see any charisma there.
I see. So likable.
I'm talking about his performance. His
performance is cool, but he is. Yeah, he's.
Well, that's
he's
where
scary,
I'm getting to.
is what he is.
So that's where I'm leading you, taking you guys by the hand. Is that in these first scenes, Eric, not knowing what you know now, right? When you're watching it in the first time, you don't know what you know yet about him. We didn't find out about
but there was always something about him.
We heard what he did. Yeah, we heard what he did, but we didn't. Yeah, but we didn't know. So you meet him, and he's smiling, and he's got that little bit of an Elvis look about him, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Everything you hear Mr. White say about him, he's a psychopath, and trigger happy.
Well, he's the one that tips you off. Keitel's the one that really, takes you there. And it's him confronting him even in the very beginning. It's almost, sort of foreshadowing that, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, see, he's likable as a psycho, I guess, but he plays it well.
That leads to when Mr. Blonde finally appears.
Drinking a soda
because
drinking a soda.
I'm only saying this because that scene to me it's probably at this stage, despite all the violence he's had in his movies that have taken it to such levels, blood and this is the one scene to this day that I can't watch it.
Oh, it's hard to watch.
What are we talking about?
I cannot watch it. It is it just. But it's implied. It's so disturbing.
People were literally walking out of the movie during when it was screening during that scene, but they never. It is one of the best examples of implied violence that your mind
camera
is
literally
over.
goes
and it works.
It works.
And you're
the music
your own
playing,
devices.
though, that's the brilliance. Yeah. The choice of music is so lighthearted, and and the way he's kind of
dances
moving
into it.
Well, it reflects his. Well, like you said, it reflects that charm. That's
any
charisma,
other director could have done it like really serious, or even done it like the maniacal Joker type where he's laughing, but it wouldn't have had that kind of really disarming kind of feeling to it. Where this is horrific, but you see him like kind of just like enjoying what he's doing, like. Perfect choice.
He's holding up the ear. He's like, "Hello."
What's crazy about
once he steps into it, like when he breaks the dance, and he just steps in and does it. I can't watch it. I gotta leave the room.
Yeah. What's crazy about it is I had revisited this film after not seeing it for a number of years, and because of how vividly they described the heist, I forgot that wasn't part of the movie. Because I'm thinking about this, what they're saying in my head. I'm going, when are they going to flash back to that? And they never do. And then when they panned away from the ear, I'm like, oh, they don't really show him cut off the ear. But because, just the fact that he had it in his hand, like I just remember him cutting that off, even though he never actually.
And then the makeup, the shots of him with
that's what's called the Mandela effect, right? Where you thought you saw it.
It's more impactful. It's more impactful that way.
Yeah, because your mind can think up a lot more horrible things
than he can show you. Yeah, it's actually brilliant, but still very hard to watch.
So before we got to that, there was a face-off between Mr. White and Mr. Blonde, and that's when Mr. Blonde got to be confronted about what he did. And Harvey Keitel really you almost got me killed, asshole. I love that's one of my favorite scenes with because Mr. White just lays into him, and it was a great way for Harvey Keitel to really stretch.
Yeah.
If they hadn't have done what I told them not to do,
they wouldn't have been dead.
They wouldn't have been dead.
I don't like alarms, Mr. White. It was
great.
I bet you're a big Lee Marvin fan, aren't you? God, I almost had a heart attack. My heart is beating. But what I want to get to, God.
Well, just because of that scene, can we just discuss Mr. Pink and Mr. White? How good are they that they're having their little spat? They don't hear Mr. Blonde walk in. He's slurping his soda. He's sitting on the like he's sitting there watching it, and then he's like, but no one sees or hears him come in. How good are they? I mean, nothing for nothing. Somebody
you gonna bark,
noticed.
little doggy, or are you gonna bite?
Well, that was the point where they had the guns pointed at each other.
Yeah, they were in.
I think they were like focused on not getting dead. You know,
peripheral vision, Nick.
Okay, so we're going to jump around just because I want to address the Mr. Blonde thing, and I want to get to the question.
It's like the movie. We're going to jump around.
Eventually nice guy Eddie comes back, and Mr. Blonde gets killed by Mr. Orange because he's about to, after he tortures the cop, he says, "How about a little fire, Scarecrow?" And he's going to light him on fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Orange, who we know is the undercover cop, he kills Mr. Blonde. Nice guy Eddie comes in, sees that he's dead, doesn't believe the story that Mr. Orange tells him, but Mr. White, Harvey Keitel, verifies that this guy was bam, bam, bam. Here's my question. Was Mr. Blonde always this unhinged, or did this happen as a result of jail? Because if the way Joe runs his business and them, they want professional, everything is planned out professionals, would they have, knowing that if he was like this, would they have let him on this job? Or when they met him, he was, he had an agenda because he was in jail, he hates cops, and he said, "I want to get back to work." So my question to you guys is, was he always like this, or was this something because Sean Penn, nice guy Eddie, seemed quite surprised by this, and it didn't seem to comport with the whole careful planning and everything else that they would unleash, because everything is about being professionals and getting the right people, and knowing if that he had these tendencies, they would have never used them. Nick, you go first.
I think he always had that tendency there. Uh-huh. I like to think that there's a comparison between the Vega brothers and the Gecko brothers that Tarantino did for From Dusk Till Dawn. One of them is unhinged and one of them is not, and he didn't intentionally want to start this movie making, the Vega brothers, but I always wanted to see that prequel that they said they would have made just to see if, to your point, was he always this unhinged or not? But I think so. I think he always had that tendency to him. And I think the fact that the guy that he's torturing is a cop. There's that line that Mr. Pink says, did you shoot any real people? Oh, just cops, not real people.
No real people.
These are criminals, and the cops are like
disposable,
collateral damage, etc., which is awful. But that's so. I think that's
Sean,
the thing.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if this kind of thing happens overnight, but maybe maybe they elevated him a little too soon for a job like this. They didn't see it coming, but I think it probably was always there. I don't think I don't know. To me, he was in jail for 4 years,
so 4 years, so he could have been stewing about that.
Didn't they take care of him though while he was in jail?
They did, but I seem to think that they would have never have used him on a job like this. Then
I think they too soon after being out of prison. Probably that was a mistake.
Because I think he got it. Yeah, because he came out of prison, hates cops. They got a cop. He's got an opportunity to really just kind of incur his wrath.
Well, and also they didn't expect it to go as awry as it did. Yeah. The fact that they were set up. I think you had to do what you had to do.
Did it go as awry because he went trigger happy when the alarm went off? Just like in Heat, right? You had the guy that was like obviously not ready for the job, and he's the one that kind of set the dominoes falling. So was Mr. Blonde kind of shooting everybody what started the whole gunfire, or would that have happened anyway, whether they killed civilians
maybe
or
not as much civilian, but I think either way those cops were ready, right? I mean,
they would have gone out guns blazing, right?
They would. I think that was inevitably going to be the result.
Christy?
I agree with Sean that it doesn't happen overnight, so I think he probably always kind of, you could toe the line, being a little bit of a psychopath, but maybe being in jail for 4 years, it's like letting a caged animal out. And so he gets out of jail and he wants to get back to work, and they just throw him into this job with guys he doesn't know. And it was like lighting the fire on what had been simmering for so long. Right. Sure. It was just, it gave him that opportunity to just go crazy, because, especially when things went so bad and people started getting killed, there's a part of him that might have known, I'm not getting out of this. Either I'm going to jail or I'm getting killed. So fuck it.
Just go for it.
Just go for it.
So do you think this would have happened had he not done 4 years in jail? That eventually it would have led something like this. He was capable.
He might have had a little bit more sanity to it, but I agree with you that I don't think you become a psychopath like overnight. I think it's there. It's something that probably builds. If it doesn't happen, if you're not automatically like just psychopath like from your youth on, probably just builds and slowly gets worse and worse. So I don't I think because it was just it was a perfect storm for this to come out for him. I mean, it would be my interpretation.
I've got a question, especially for Eric. What happened to Mr. Blue?
I wanted to bring that up.
Eric, what happened to Mr. Blue?
Mr. Blue.
Either he got caught, or either he's dead, or he's not. Either he's got caught by the cops, or he didn't. That's all we got about Mr. Blue.
I know.
Poor Eddie.
Do you know anything happened to Mr. Blue?
He's that one character, right? That really
Eddie Bunker.
He's
the only criminal. He's the only real criminal.
Sean looks very puzzled. What do you got?
Well, what I don't understand is how Quentin Tarantino got shot in the head, but was able to drive the car a little bit and then dies. Like, what? That I don't understand. Like, he's dead. Like he's like trying to start the car and
he's like, I'm blind. He's like, I'm blind. He goes, no, you got blood in your eyes.
I mean, if you get shot in the head but like, you don't die from a superficial wound like that. I mean, I don't know.
I got the sense that it cracked his, like, I don't know. He thought he was okay, but
maybe he wasn't dead.
I think Tarantino did him dirty. I think he just, maybe there was a scene that perhaps they cut out. I don't know.
Tarantino did himself dirty?
No, Mr. Blue.
Mr. Blue. Oh, Mr. Blue.
Blue, Eddie Bunker.
Well,
that's... There was
the point is the whole crew should never have gotten together to begin with. That's the whole point of this thing. Is just
that's what Eddie Bunker, because he's a criminal, said.
And getting back to Matt said, it's like I think he's a complete psycho. I think they knew it. I think because he's done it before. I think he's probably has that history, which is probably why they hired him in a sense because But I think they probably thought they could keep him in check. Like like you say, Christy, like perfect storm. That's a great way to describe this whole situation. These guys getting together should have never happened because it's a bad mix, and I think that's the whole. Yeah. All this comes out, in the reveals, like as you get to know these guys and what happened, and I think that's really the point. Is just
myriad names.
So to say, just point him out, I think you got to question everybody. Even Keitel is like, he's a bit of a psycho too. I think he pretty much, even though he seems like he cares,
he's a sociopath.
He doesn't. He only cares about himself. Really, I mean, he's just and I think this was confirmed.
Orange at the hospital. He would have dropped him at the hospital. He's like, I can't do that.
Right.
Without him getting caught.
But Sean, he was just trying to follow the playbook of, we're going to meet here. Joe's going to get you the doctor, and we don't need to it wasn't a risk that needed to be taken. It's not like he didn't want to. He's like, well, Joe's going to be here. We're going to get you to the doctor, and you're going to be fine.
And he was willing. He did at some point say that I will. I actually, from Mr. White, and he's a sociopath, so don't get me wrong, but there's a very paternal thing happening between him and Mr. Orange, in my opinion. He's very some of my favorite scenes are between him and Mr. Orange in the car when he's bringing him in, like he's holding him up. He's like, he talks to him like, I don't know if he talks to him like I would talk to my dog or you talk to a kid. It's like, who's a tough guy? Who's a tough guy? Tell me who's a tough guy. He's like, I'm a tough guy. Like, it's just like this back and forth between them. Like, I got,
and he combs his hair. He combs his hair.
In a fucked up way, very paternal.
Well, it could, it's a side of his character that maybe even he is surprised by. Like I would normally do this, but there's something about the guy that that I connect with or something to that effect. And, so these surprises, these reveals about these characters are because you think you got them pegged and they're all like, they all come out sort of like,
Much like Nick said before, if that woman never shot Mr. Orange, we wouldn't have a movie. And if Mr. White was never so paternal to Mr. Orange, none of this would have happened.
Right. Because there is that missing scene of like, what is their bond? Like, what made him trust this guy enough to tell him his name? And right up until the end, I think he finds out. Right, it's like
I think it was taking the bullet. I think that him taking the bullet.
He said it was his fault.
like that could have been me.
Yeah, he said he gave him the name a couple of days ago. Though there was another.
But
he gave the name in the car. He told him.
In the car.
You had talked about the Bruins. Was it the Bruins? No,
Brewers.
A couple of days ago. Yeah. But he gave him the name Larry in the car because he's like, "What'd you give me a name for?" He's like, "Because he asked. He was shot in the belly."
What do I do? I can't give out that information.
But he also told him where he was from. So it was like, I don't know.
I'm sorry, I can't give out that information.
Did you guys know that Keitel's character is actually Quentin Tarantino's brother? Jimmy, the character of Jimmy, Harvey Keitel is his brother.
From Pulp Fiction.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. Jimmy. Okay.
Jimmy is his younger brother.
The brother of Mr. White.
Of Mr. White.
But not Winston Wolfe. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wait, Dean, you're not going to do it?
What?
The cup of coffee?
No. We're not doing Pulp Fiction.
It's jinxed.
In the interesting acting choices that didn't work category, Sean.
Okay.
Harvey Keitel lighting his lighter.
Yeah.
He was doing this thing where he's trying to snap it. Like it was a character thing, and he tried to do it twice. He did it once, but it was like a weird thing.
Yeah.
Like it seemed like he was trying to have this character have this unique thing, but he could never do it.
No, it was stupid.
Like snapping the lighter and putting the flame on,
Yeah.
Maybe it was symbolic.
The second time he does it, he tries it like 5 times. It's like, fuck it, I'm just going to light it.
Yeah.
But maybe
it's very strange.
Maybe it's symbolic.
I don't know what, I think it was supposed to be a character thing, but it just, and they just kind of went with it. If the take was good, they're not going to stop it because of that, because they kept going.
But it showed his imperfection. Yeah,
I would. I mean, it might have probably just been what you said, Dean. But I'll go with Nick, and it shows that he's not. He's like this. He has this. You think he's calm, cool, and collective, but it's just flawed.
It's like a nerve.
He's not perfect. Yeah. Like he doesn't get it. He doesn't get it right every time. And in this case, he didn't get it right at all when it comes to Mr. Orange.
Yeah.
What are you, the fucking silent partner? That's a great line. When Mr. Blonde comes in and then Steve Buscemi's like, well, yeah, but he seems okay now.
He seems okay now. Well, I like when Mr. Pink starts and he's like, I'm pretty sure you're okay. I'm fucking sure you're okay.
I'm sure you're not the rat. Yeah, a lot of good rapid fire dialogue, and you, yeah. To Sean's point before, when I said what characters do you connect with, yeah, none of these people are nice people, but when you see them, scoping out the job and just interacting with them, again, they're regular people. This happens to be their profession.
They're likable,
and they understand as a part of their profession that they may need to kill somebody if just like some people need to be in front of a computer for a certain amount of time or whatever their job is, whatever the job duties entail. In this profession, because that's mentioned throughout many times about being a professional, right? So this is for these people, this is a line of work that they're in. These guys just aren't like a petty bicycle thief. This is a line of work that these people are in. There's obviously a community of them, enough that Joe Cabot can pull from for Mr. Purple. He's on another gang. Like there's obviously there's a whole fountain or wellspring of people that he can use. So the notion of they're not good people is true, but there doesn't mean that they're not interesting and fun to watch.
They have a certain code to follow, certain rules, right? Like when Mr. White is explaining to Mr. Orange what to do when we go in there, it's like, you just break their nose, it'll bleed, that'll stop. But if it's, a civilian, you just look at them scared, they'll be. But if it's somebody who's a manager, you got to hit him hard, cut off their finger,
break his thumb or break his pinky or whatever, and he'll tell you if he wears women's
different
clothes.
Levels. And not sociopaths in that sense.
In that scene, you can see how uncomfortable Mr. Orange is.
Yeah, because he's like, as an undercover cop, he might have to do something like that,
Yeah, like he's not comfortable.
Donnie Brasco, that whole.
And also when Mr. White blows away those cops, so in the flashback scene before he gets shot, when the cops come wheeling around the corner, and Harvey Keitel is there with just both guns, he just lays into those cops, and Tim Russ' character, Mr. Orange, the undercover cop, can't do anything. All he can do is watch it.
Yeah, when they walk away, you can see it. You can see Mr. Orange.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's why he ended up shooting, Mr. Blonde, because he was going to kill this poor cop. He didn't know that he knew who he was, and he was holding back, not giving up, the name. But I mean, that's why the writing was so great. Just all this information coming out, and it's really wonderful.
I thought in that moment though, like there's that look on Mr. Orange's face when he blows away those cops. Like there's almost a moment of like, should I blow him away? And
I agree. Yeah.
And I was like, you should be blowing him away, but he makes up for it in the warehouse. And what I love about after he shoots Mr. Blonde that I always forget about is, the camera work is great, and he's still got the gun, and he kind of like lunges forward, like, should I do? And he's got no bullets left, and then you see Mr. Blonde see him and finally fall down.
Yeah,
you never hear him fall.
He does that with the woman too, though. When he shoots the woman, he does that same type of like lifting of the gun type thing. I don't know if it's because he's never had. I think it almost seems like he's never had to shoot somebody until this series of events. All of a sudden, like kind of.
Well, he probably hasn't. I mean, it's not all that common that cops kill people. It's really. Yeah. I imagine it's traumatizing.
And that woman shot him out of fear, right? Out of self-defense, thinking, oh, this, so the fact that, obviously he shot her out of instinct, but it had to have traumatized him,
But he only had that instinct after he was shot.
Right.
Like, he should have taken out Harvey Keitel.
For sure.
But he's okay with shooting this one. That's amazing the way they did that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, those are tough choices as an undercover cop is how much do you let happen, right? For the quote unquote, the greater good, because, what are your orders? What are your parameters versus what do you do that's morally right at that point? Yeah. He just blew away 2 cops, and how many other people got shot at this point, right? The innocent people at the jewelry store. I mean, this thing basically turned into a clusterfuck at some point. Yeah. So, Sean, you make a good point. Would he have been wrong? Just kind of cut the losses at this point and just kind of either arrest people or.
Yeah. He would have been killed.
He could have shot him and said, he got shot by someone.
But there was only those 2, like Tarantino's dead, Mr. Brown is dead, and it's just him. There's just those 2 guys, and he could have taken him out.
Well, but the whole thing was to get Joe, which is why, like when he's talking to Nash, he's like, you just gotta hold on, keep it together. We're waiting for Joe.
You can still go to the warehouse though. He could still go and be like, oh, Mr. White bit it. He got killed.
Yeah, he got tagged.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sean.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, why don't you just ruin Reservoir Dogs, Sean?
Right, everybody.
And that's it for that's the abbreviated version.
Where's the plot hole bell? There it is.
Nah.
There we go.
Plot hole. No, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of great things to chew on in this film. Besides, and that's one of the great things is besides the snappy dialogue. When you go a little further down, there are those kind of moral questions. This undercover cop lets a lot of stuff go on.
Oh yeah.
Before he finally, but then again, he was also gut shot, so there's not a whole lot he's going to be doing. Just to get back to Kirk Baltz, he played Marvin Nash. The guy had a thankless job. I mean, he had a tough gig doing that, And one of the things is also when they screened this film and people were walking out. One of the reasons, somebody said the reason why they walked out is when Nash's character said, "I have kids."
Yeah,
and that was an ad-libbed line. That was unscripted. When he's talking to Mr. Money, please, I have kids. That affected people. So people got really affected by that. They're like, I don't want to see.
It affected Madsen.
I don't want to see. What's going to happen next then?
Interesting fact is Madsen had just become a father. Michael Madsen actually is very anti-violence and had a very hard time doing that scene. And so I had read that when Nash says that, and I paused and watched it over and over, you can hear Tarantino off the set saying, oh, no, because he knew how Michael Madsen felt about violence, and he thought that was going to trigger him. So go back and watch that scene and just listen really carefully, because you hear, it's very faint, but you hear Tarantino off camera going, no, oh, no. And it's
wow.
It's watch it. I played it back a couple of times. I was like, holy shit, it's really there.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's the most noble character in the entire movie.
Nash?
Which one?
The cop.
Yeah, he doesn't give him up.
He doesn't give him up, and he's getting tortured. And he goes, yeah, I know who you are.
And he wasn't going to give him up. He was going to get burned alive. He wasn't going to give him up.
Yeah. Yep. Like you heard your boss.
It's not my boss.
I don't have a boss. I don't work for anybody. Like there was nothing he could say, and he didn't help his cause by doing that either. He thought he was, even your boss said, he's like, my boss.
That just pissed him off.
But you know what? It was all bets were off when he says, I'm just going to torture you because I want to. And it's like, shit.
Yeah.
So there's not even at this point, it's not even a reason. There's no, and that led to one of the greatest shots here. I wrote this down too. I'm glad we kind of circled back on this. After he tied him up and cut off his ear, when he goes to get the gas can, that is one entire shot from him.
Yeah.
Leaving the warehouse, walking out, the radio gets low, stuck in the middle with you, still playing, and it kind of fades out.
Because you're outside.
Walks across the parking lot, walks to the car, opens it, gets the gas can. We pick him up from behind. He walks back in. We hear the music start to come. That was like one really nice, beautiful long shot. And maybe again another Scorsese.
Well, I was going to say from Goodfellas, from Goodfellas when Ray
really nice because it was something different where there was music playing and you left that scene. Mm-hmm. You went out to another scene and then you came back in.
And the music is still
and Mr. Orange was still laying on the floor. It was like the wide shot when he comes back in. Nash was still to the chair with the ear off, and that whole everybody had to remain in character while the camera wasn't even there. While they were following him out to get the gas can and come back in, shot. And then they came back into the set, which was really again ballsy and bold moves by a director that is a first time untested and wrote the screenplay. So
but that shows I think that's why I like this. He really had an eye. He has an eye and an ear for telling the story. Like you could tell this is a guy who loves movies, who's watched so many, has been influenced by so many. And had all these, stories, and he probably dreamed about those shots, as he was writing them, and now he has a chance to film them.
Yeah, and he echoes a lot of those shots, like in the beginning, when Harvey Keitel and Steve Buscemi in the very first scene when they leave Mr. Orange and they go to the bathroom to talk. It's like a far shot, and they're in like the other room, and they're talking for a while. He mimicked that in Pulp Fiction with Jules and Vincent. When they went to knock on the door and then they walked away and talking about Marcellus and the foot massage, they walk all the way down the hall and they're having a conversation.
Yeah. And
the camera stays here and then they come back. So he also got good at recycling some of those things and using them again in the right way. He didn't, so he was developing in this film, he was developing that bag of tricks that he would call upon. And I think that's why this is probably just still my favorite. I just love this debut. It's the film is sweaty. It's gritty. Like you really feel like the heat, that it was like just the heat of the action and of the crime and of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. For me, it's the most realistic. After this, he became very stylized. It started to become style over substance of, I want to pay homage to the 70s kung fu flicks. So I'm going to make Kill Bill. I want to pay homage to the blaxploitation. So I'll do Jackie Brown. And, everything kind of became a reason to do something. But this one was, here's my calling card. Here's my one. This might be my only shot. And I'm going to put, and he kind of put it all out there.
What Tarantino's also really good about doing is creating his own little universe. Like, because you brought up Marcellus, who obviously it's mentioned in Reservoir Dogs and it's in Pulp Fiction.
Different Marcellus.
But he does Alabama when he talks about Alabama, that's True Romance. Now he wrote that film, but he has the Vic and Vince Vega, like he has this way of for at least a few of the films that he's written and or directed, and just kind of
showed up in Natural Born Killers, right? Skagnetti?
It was Natural Born Killers.
Was that Tom Sizemore?
Of kind of just creating his little universe, which was something that I don't know if anyone had done before.
No.
And maybe to what you were just saying about, like, he did Kill Bill to pay homage to this, and he did this to pay homage to that. Maybe it goes back to Nick had sent the article about he's retiring and on his 10th film, because these are the types of films he loved. So he wanted to make sure, knowing I'm gonna stop at 60, I want to make sure that I do pay homage to these different genres. Very well could have been, because he was limiting to what he was going to do.
Good point. Yeah,
I wonder if like today's landscape though has any kind of effect on him retiring as well, because everything's a franchise now, everything's a universe now, just crossover. There's bleeding. Nothing has its own identity anymore. It's just, you know,
Star Trek, right? I mean, he was rumored to have he was going to direct the next Star Trek film. So that who knows?
I think one of the things is
he said he planned on just 10.
The end of movie going, like going to theaters, shooting on 35 millimeter film. I've heard him say, like, if it's not real film, he doesn't want to do it anymore. Like the last movie I saw, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I was lucky enough to see it on 35 millimeter, and he's one of the few directors that still makes his movies available like that. So I just think it's an arbitrary thing to kind of say, I'm going to stop at this number or stop at this point. Like if you have more story to tell, like what if he's 80 years old, like Clint Eastwood was, and just decides, I have another story to tell. I want to tell a movie.
I mean,
why make it so arbitrary?
He said he's going to write.
Athletes come out of retirement all the time now.
Yeah.
That's
why I think in his heart he's a writer. I think in his heart
he wants to write. He wants to write. He's going to write. He's going to post. Honestly, you have to commend him to go out and not start making shitty films. Like it's kind of like,
I agree. Yeah.
Gene Hackman retired. I really wish it wasn't on Welcome to Mooseport. I wish he'd just come out of retirement, make a really good movie, and then re-retire. But it's nice when a career ends
on a high note.
On a high note. The same thing with athletes, as opposed to retiring, coming like Tom Brady retires, comes back. Brett Favre.
I agree.
Michael Jordan has to go play baseball because and that doesn't work. It's like I kind of commend the guy for having the balls to do it. Really,
I agree. I think it's cool that there's a finite sort of sensibility of that, like just having a select few movies. I think Hollywood, he could have ended with that. I would have been fine with that, because I thought it was great.
Yeah,
great.
Supposedly the next one is called The Film Critic, and it's kind of a spiritual sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of hoping that it's not as big, because Hollywood was big and bold and visually speaking, but it was also very personal. So I'm kind of hoping that the critic is actually a little bit smaller. Yeah. So he begins with a small film and then he ends on that same note, because I feel like Hollywood was like the culmination of everything that he's done, for the most part.
I had also read that he was contemplating, he walked away from it. He was contemplating his last film to remake Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I had heard
he was contemplating that as well as his final,
but if he had done it, I think it would have been interesting. I think it would have been maybe looking at the heist, telling the story of Mr. Blue. And
I wouldn't want him to remake this.
But like saying what would not have done. Or
I would have preferred the prequel.
They had done like a staged reading with black actors.
Yeah, they've done that. Yeah, they did that.
And how interesting would that have been to retell the story with an all black cast? Like, I mean, just interesting. But I don't think he would have done just that. I don't think he would have done like a shot for shot remake just on a higher budget. I don't think he would have done that,
Yeah.
But in a way, didn't he do that with Hateful Eight? Because it's kind of like you got these group of people. They're all not likable people. They're all dirty. I kind of feel like that's like that. It is kind of like Reservoir Dogs in that sense. Like it's just, and these big reveals about everybody, and everybody kind of knows something about the other person. And so I kind of feel like he did do that with Hateful Eight, when this big 70 millimeter thing. I don't understand why it all takes place in one room for the most part. He's got these grand vistas in the beginning, but it's like this big widescreen.
It's easier to manage actors. You get one space.
Put them in one space, and that's
I guess so.
All right, let's wind this up, and as we
can
do,
I ask a question?
What? Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know. I've never noticed it as many times as I've seen the film. Did anyone notice when Nice Guy Eddie is driving to the warehouse and he's on the phone with the guy? He's telling him
the Zach Morris phone.
Dove, and he's like, no, he has, he's driving around with a cop in his trunk. I'm on there now, and he's like, he's trying to find out what's going on. When the car is driving away, an orange balloon goes on screen. I never noticed it before. I actually looked it up, and because and so people have speculated that that's your hint that Mr. Orange is the rat, because at that point in the film we still don't know.
Right.
But Quentin Tarantino swears it was a coincidence.
Interesting.
But when you rewatch if you rewatch the movie, just when Nice Guy Eddie's in the car and then the car's driving away, you'll see this orange balloon just behind the car. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there's speculations about the arrangement of the coffins in the set. You know, one side of the set's got the hearse, and the other side has coffins standing up, and there's a white coffin there, and there's other colored coffins. There's a lot to kind of chew on, but let's circle around. I mean, there's a lot we didn't touch on. We didn't touch on the great Lawrence Tierney, and we have to give him some credit. He's just the gruffest, grumpiest, great gravelly voiced actor. Like, he's the only guy that could go toe to toe and keep these guys. Honestly, Lawrence Tierney could keep these guys in line. Like, you believe it.
I paid for breakfast, you cheap bastard. I don't tip.
What do
you mean you don't tip?
You know that he was so difficult on this set, though. He got fired.
Fine.
He got fired and then rehired. And he was
that's
drunk.
They needed him.
He wouldn't know. He didn't know his lines.
That's
like
great.
He was a nightmare to work with.
I don't care if you're T. Morgan or Irving the Tailor. You ride it out.
Yeah, it came out pretty good on screen. So
no, he's great in the movie. Just formidable. When you read about him on set, it sounded like he was a nightmare.
It could go two ways. Nightmare. My way or the highway. What's it gonna be, Mr. Pink?
My favorite line is by Joe. You know, when he goes, "You're not Mr. Purple. Some guy on some other job is Mr. Purple. You're pink. You're Mr.
Be thankful you're not Mr. Yellow." Yeah. Let's go to work. And he coined the phrase that would resurface in From Dusk Till Dawn. Ramblers, let's get rambling. Yeah. George Clooney would say that in From Dusk Till Dawn. He said, "Ramblers, let's get rambling."
There's so many.
So, that line makes you think though and speculate. Like, what's that other job? You know, I'd like to see a movie with Mr. Purple and Mr. Green and Mr. Whatever. You know, so
no, he was great. I don't care if he was difficult. I don't care if he was drunk. You could tell he forgot his line during that scene. Because he's like, Joe, Steve Buscemi was like, "Joe, it's beneath me," and then he's like, you got me all choked up, and I can't even talk, and it's like,
Dennis Dillinger.
Like that sniff, let's go to work. Like it's like, he's so great. I love Lawrence Tierney in this film. I don't care if he was difficult and he was drunk. That's fine. He gets a pass.
Okay.
If he's difficult,
we don't care. We didn't make the movie
and delivers like this. He's good.
Why should we care? We only get to see his performance, so we don't.
Toothpick Vic.
He was up. He was up for on the Waterfront. I think I read.
Oh, really? For what? Rod Steiger, probably Rod Steiger,
and I think he had like a problem with alcohol, and he was always known to be very difficult to work with, and it's another sliding door is what would his career have been. Had he been in that film? Yeah, there's a couple of other big ones he was up for. He just fucked it up.
He was in The Naked Gun.
He was.
He's the manager of the Angels. I turned it on last night to look for highlights, and I'm like, Naked. I'm like, wait, there's Joe. I'm like, he's the manager.
Joe.
Joe Cabot.
Yeah.
The Thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with Christy because she's never ready. So, what is one? Not 5, not 7, not 3. What is one of your favorite scenes?
Shouldn't have started with
Dead silence is not good for a podcast.
Well, if I say all of the scenes with Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth,
that's fine.
One.
There you go.
So all of them, because especially the scenes in the car, because when he's like, and I still to this day will say, "You're gonna be okay. Say the goddamn words." Like I just a back and forth with them where he's like, "Are you a doctor? Are you a you could first of all, I'm not a doctor. I don't think it takes days to die from a gunshot wound to your stomach. It'd take days to die from your injury. No.
And there's like 5 quarts of blood on the floor.
No.
I'm surprised he lived as long as he did. You know?
So I would have to. I would say every scene between them I absolutely love, and I am going to say the Michael Madsen when he's dancing and stuck in the middle. That's it.
That's two.
Creepiest.
You messed it up.
Okay, I would do a lot more, Nick.
You blew it. All right, Nick, what do you got?
I love the Mexican standoff at the end.
Yeah, at the end.
But here's my question about that scene, because obviously that's an homage. It's been done in so many movies. He did it so well. It's so much tension. Did Mr. Pink shoot at the end? Right? Right?
Mr. White gets 2 shots in. He shoots Joe. He gets shot by nice guy Eddie.
In a Mexican standoff, you can't you can only shoot the guy that you're pointing at, right? But obviously Mr. White
Mexican standoff is a no-win situation, meaning you're not going to get out of it.
He had enough time, so Mr. White had enough time to shoot Joe, and then after he gets shot, he shoot. But
yeah, I've had to watch that a couple times.
I would love to think, and it happens so fast, and I got to see the script and see how Tarantino wrote it. But I would love to think that Mr. Pink is obviously just watching it all. And he has his gun because he knows he's like, okay, they're gonna start shooting. There's still gonna be one person left, and because then after that whole thing is done and everybody's been shot, he kind of just gets up and walks out.
Yeah, gets up and leaves.
But then he gets shot. He gets shot outside. So
yeah, but that's what I'm
Harvey
saying.
Keitel gets 2 shots, and he gets
had
Joe.
he been able to leave before that, he would have gotten away with it. That's my favorite scene. That's an iconic scene. Probably more so than almost as much as the ear scene. When people think of the movie, they think of that.
It's a great performance from Harvey Keitel. It's like, don't make me do it, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Son of a, goddamn you, Joe. Like he's real. Like
he believes.
He doesn't want it. He doesn't want it to come to this. He's like, don't make me do this.
Which is why
Joe.
that ending is so powerful.
That boy's that gun at my father.
So Dean, you rewatch. I kind of watched it in slow motion. So White shoots Joe. Who does Joe shoot?
Harvey Keitel gets shot twice, and he shoots twice.
Joe shoots Orange
first, right? And then automatically Mr. White shoots Joe. Then, of course, Eddie has to shoot Mr. White.
And then who does White shoot again?
He shoots nice guy Eddie.
But I'm thinking Joe.
He shoots Joe and nice guy Eddie.
I still think maybe. I think Mr. Pink did it.
No, he had nothing to do with it.
That's my theory.
Watch it.
I watched it like multiple times.
If I ever speak to Quentin Tarantino, I'm going to be like, maybe you even had it in the script. But I'm like, when you shot it, did Mr. Pink shout Eddie? That's.
Are you going to say it?
He's going to say. Why are you wearing that suit?
Exactly like that. I'll be like,
he's going to say, why are you wearing that suit?
I even have the glasses on.
Because he's auditioning for Mr. Purple in Matrix.
Exactly. No, his next movie, his final movie, if there's a Mr. Purple scene, I want it. I want that role.
You're ready for it.
Quentin Tarantino, if you're listening to the 3324 podcast.
How that worked out for her?
He has his podcast, Video Archives.
I said if he's listening to 3324 podcast, Nick Leshy would like to be Mr. Purple.
There we go.
Everything. That should be the first 3324 interview by of a celebrity, Mr. Quentin Tarantino.
There we go.
I
don't think we're going to wait that long. Sean.
I'm gonna go with Orange blowing away Mr. Blonde just before he's about to light the gasoline, because I love the way they do the camera work with the gun, and then you don't hear anything, but then you hear a thud, and then you see Mr. Blonde come into the frame. He gets to look at Mr. Orange. They get to have that moment, and then he just dies.
And he slides down.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, you freaking, like, I didn't see that coming. He didn't. And the scene that takes place between the 2 cops after, so that whole piece, that I like that.
Yeah, because Mr. Orange was pretty much incapacitated for the first half of the film,
and it gives you hope that like maybe they're both going to get out of this.
Yeah, nice guy Eddie's like, you mean like, oh, him?
Like, you mean this cop?
Better or worse?
Yeah. Oh.
Chris Penn is great in this movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, Eric, what do you got?
Poor Chris Penn.
The E. Lois scene?
The what?
E. Lois?
No, I agree with Nick. To me, the whole movie is the end. Everything that, that's the movie right there. So yeah, everything up to that point is just, but I'm going to go with that as my favorite scene. The standoff, because it's just nothing. There's absolutely no way anybody's going to fucking come out of this, and I love that, so yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, and especially when Mr. Orange says I'm a cop. When he says I'm a cop, when he tells Mr. White I'm a cop, and the way Harvey Keitel starts crying.
I know.
Yeah.
Why does he tell him
a bond?
They have
some bond.
I think he had to.
What's going on? There's a scene they didn't show.
Close. He's this close.
I think he knew it was over. I think he knew. I think
he knew.
Sean, I think he knew it was over. I think he knew
it
was over.
He knew he wasn't going to make it. Even if they took him to the hospital now, he's done.
It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. He was going to die.
Put a bullet in his head?
Because he's going to die anyway. So
does he put a bullet in his head? As I'm asking you, does he?
Yeah, I think he does.
Yeah, he does. He shoots him.
Well, actually, no. They come in and they shoot him. But I don't know if he has time to shoot Mr.
Yeah, you hear one shot because he shoots him. Then the cops shoot him.
That's the implication. I think they're like drop the gun, and you hear you hear
a boom, and then they shoot him. Yeah,
I think he kind of owed it to Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, 100%. Harvey Keitel, everything that happened was because of him.
He took it on. He took him under his wing, so to speak. He was the new guy.
So sure.
He wasn't a cop in that last scene, Mr. Orange. He was just, it was man to man, and that was what he had to do.
Which is why he didn't kill him in the earlier scene when he had the moment. He had a chance to after he blows away the two cops. So I guess he felt, I don't know. Maybe he felt he maybe deserved to die. I don't know.
There's definitely a relationship between the two of them.
No doubt. Yeah.
There's a bond. I'm not sure how it developed so quickly, but in the end, he had to tell him he was a cop. Better for him to tell him than Harvey Keitel to go to jail and find out later. I think.
You think
my favorite
Mr. White would have lived if he hadn't gotten shot? You think Mr. White would have lived from his wound?
Mr. White?
Yeah, Mr. White.
Yeah, he would have lived if he didn't shoot Orange. Well, he got shot twice. He probably would have made it.
They might not have shot him, though, when he came in if he didn't shoot Mr. Orange, though.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, he got blood twice, would he have survived that to go to jail?
He probably would have died. I think it was like Eric said, there was no way out for anybody. I don't think anybody was walking away.
Yeah.
My favorite scene, oddly enough, is one of the smaller scenes, and it's between Joe and Larry, Mr. White. When Mr. White has his flashback and they're in the office, it's just a casual scene. And they're just talking shop, right? And he's like, that's when, like Christy said, the reference to Alabama. What happened? What happened to Alabama? Oh, she does her own thing or whatever. And they're just kind of, like two guys that are just kind of, and which ties to the end. That scene, because that's the only scene you really see where there's an interpersonal relationship between Joe and Larry, right? And it's kind of like they're sitting around, they're having a drink, they're in the wood paneled office, and telling about the job. What's the cut, Papa? Juicy, Junior, juicy. Just really just a nice scene that calls to the end when Harvey Keitel is saying, "Joe, don't make me do this." Like it calls back to that relationship that they have. They've had a long-term friendly relationship. Like I said, Harvey Keitel is older, so he's probably an elder statesman among that criminal element.
They're the veterans. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And he's got that relationship with Joe that Joe trusts him. So, and that's why he's like, God damn you, Joe, don't make me do this. And that really drives that ending drives it home because of that scene.
That does beg the question, though, I guess. Why would White, in essence, choose loyalty to Orange over Joe?
He
was pissed off about everything at that point too. He was pissed off about Mr. Blonde, about almost getting killed, almost getting shot up that way too. Like the whole situation just turned out to be a disaster at that point.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. You're right because Joe's like I should have never went when I wasn't 100%. I should have my head examined. He was the only one I wasn't sure about. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're just gonna do a Lawrence Tierney movie, so Dean can always talk like.
I could do my Lawrence Tierney impression. No, but it's true. You make a good point that why would Larry not listen to Joe over? But again, I think it's because he saw the guy get shot. He couldn't have been a cop. I killed two cops in front of him and he didn't do anything. He can't be a cop.
Well, it also could go back to this paternal instinct for some reason.
And that too. And he's taking care. He take care of me. He saw him get shot. There's a lot there, but that's my favorite scene. So
maybe he had blood in his eyes,
just like Mr. Brown. Sounds like Mr. Shit.
I know you.
First time you guys saw the movie before we had the reveal, who'd you think it was? You obviously knew it was going to be one of them, right? Somebody was the rat.
So I don't think I was trying to figure it out.
I was going back and forth.
Well, they tell you halfway
White.
through.
Sometimes
I thought,
no, but before that, like you're guessing. You're like, is it Mr. Pink? Is it
Well, but you know what? There was a lot of doubt cast because Harvey Keitel didn't really believe that. He goes, no, there's not. So it was kind of one person's opinion versus another person. But that's where Steve Buscemi's character was so great because he was very methodical about explaining it. He goes, no, the cops were there. They didn't make their presence known until after. I'm not saying they weren't there. They were, but they didn't make their presence known until we left.
But you didn't find that suspect though.
Well, I think he tries to make everyone
he seemed to know a lot,
But I think it went to his character that's very methodical, right? His character was very always had logic behind everything that he was doing.
But that's the thing. It's like he knows, like he's explaining all this, which is makes you think. Okay,
he makes Mr. Blonde when Mr. Blonde comes in, he's like, "Follow me outside." It's like. Yeah. Is he taking him out to the cops? Like, is he a cop? Yeah. Like, so he does it with Blonde, he does it with White, he does it with Pink.
Really great.
He actually does it with everyone except really Orange, for that matter. Yeah, and Blue and Brown don't count because they get killed right away.
We still don't know where Mr. Blue is. If Mr. Blue, listening to this podcast, please check in.
It'd be great if he was. Like to know where you are. It'd be great if he was alive.
He survived.
That would man, if you just showed up and like the last movie or something, like he's doing nice little footnote or something, or I don't know.
I was like, well, you know what?
I don't even think he's alive anymore. But
he got a postcard to go to a tree and find a rock, not from this earth, and underneath that rock would be a box.
Because Tarantino's such a good writer. Why even have that character? For a couple of lines at the beginning of the movie, like it just didn't make sense.
There was a shift. There was a shift in the characters because he was supposed to be Mr. Pink until Buscemi auditioned and he gave it to him. So he actually wrote the whole Madonna thing for Brown, so he had more lines. Quentin Tarantino, this is his best acting, by the way. He's not that good of an actor. I don't think he's acting.
I like him in From Dusk Till Dawn. I thought he was really good in that.
Seth.
But I think there was a shift. I think there was a little bit of a shift in. He wasn't that good though. He's entertaining, but he's just not that good. I think there was a shift in some of the writing, probably a little bit. So maybe just a little bit off. But
Nick, to answer your question, Mr. Blue is the equivalent of the suitcase in Pulp Fiction. No one knows what mystery. The suitcase is for. Nobody knows what Mr. Blue's purpose is. Like what
he defends the waitresses, and these girls work on their tips in the beginning.
That's it. But
there's that.
He's a reasonable.
You could have given those lines
guy.
to Mr. Brown or somebody.
Well, hey,
interesting.
We calling Mr. Blue. That's going to be the sequel. Calling Mr. Blue. That's going to do it for this episode. We've just Mr. Blue. That's going to do it for this episode of Reservoir Dogs of the 3324 podcast. Sean Grady. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Two hands up, two thumbs up. Everybody's holding up stuff like merch. Are you selling this stuff, Nick? Do you have a bookstore?
If Quentin Tarantino's watching, we are plugging your books.
Chilling.
Come talk to us.
And
short interview, 15 minutes. All we need.
Tim Roth.
There we go.
We get Tim Roth on the episode.
There we go.
Next episode, Tim Roth.
I don't have anything to present.
School,
Eric's got his
media.
Physical media. That's the next t-shirt.
Box set.
Physical media.
And Sean and I are the only normal ones. Thank you, Sean.
Sean just show one of your action figures. Any action figure.
I will not in solidarity. Can we see some solid? Am I the only professional?
He hit it right, and that's a perfect way to end it. So
I've never seen him get so riled up. He's usually very calm.
You rub that nerve to the last end of it, and he gets him riled. So thank you, Nick. Thank you, Christy, and thank you, Sean. As always, of course, you can find us on social media. We're at 3324 Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, so you can go check us out there. For Nick, for Sean, for Christy, and of course, my best friend Eric, I'm going to ask you to please be kind and rewind.